The senator from Iowa,
I ask that the calling of the quorum be suspended.
without objection.
Mr. President, on Saturday, deadly tornadoes swept through Iowa, destroying homes, parks, and leaving over 10,000 people without power. The communities most affected are Winterset, Iowa, Sheraton, Iowa, but other communities as well. Tragically, 7 people, 5 adults and 2 children died, and many people have been affected because of this severe weather. This is the deadliest tornado in our state in 15 years. The one 15 years ago came close to my hometown of New Hartford, Iowa, and the adjoining community of Parkersburg, Iowa, and about 13 people lost their lives that time. So, with today's incident, as families, businesses, and communities continue to assess the damage and clean up from these storms, I want Iowans to know that I have talked to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas about these tornadoes. He has been assuring that wherever the federal government has authority to help, they will step in and do that. I have also reached out to FEMA, the state of Iowa, and affected communities. I'll do everything that I can at the federal level to assist. Unfortunately, Iowa is no stranger to tornadoes and natural disasters. I once again am encouraged by the stories I hear from neighbors, strangers helping each other and their communities. And of course, we all know that that is the Iowa way, neighbor helping neighbor. These storms take time to recover, and I know that we will continue to reach out and help our fellow Iowans in need. My thoughts and the thoughts of all Iowans and our prayers go out to those who lost loved ones and those whose property was affected by these tornadoes. I also pray for those who were hurt and some hospitalized, that they have a speedy recovery. Iowans are strong and resilient people, and we will recover and we will rebuild. As Iowa's senator, I'll be there to help in any way needed. Now, Mr. President, another matter that I've spoken on the floor of the United States Senate recently, and to some extent a few times last year, the issue of freedom of speech in our colleges. In recent years, I've tried to highlight some of the most ridiculous impositions on freedom of speech in college. But so many of these cases get swept under the rug. It can be hard to get an idea of whether typical students feel free to speak their minds in the university environment. So last spring, the Iowa legislature passed a bill strengthening free speech across our state's education system. In part, this bill was meant to find out how big a problem restraint of free expression is at our state's public universities. Last month, that led to the results of a survey of 17,000 students in Iowa's public universities. The results raised serious concern. Now get this, less than half of the employees thought that their university allowed them to say what they believe. A third of the students thought that their institution, quote unquote, hindered free speech. A quarter of the students didn't even think that their campus provided an, quote, environment for free and open expression of ideas, end of quote. A university that can't meet That basic bar is missing the whole purpose of a college or university. You've heard me say my definition of a university is where controversy ought to run rampant. Thankfully, the bill that passed the Iowa legislature takes action to solve the issue that I just described. This semester, students across the state have begun taking a course to instill in them the value of free speech. The goal is to ensure that students and faculty understand the value of the First Amendment, freedom of speech. The course emphasizes respect for the other's speech and its impact both in and out of the classroom. I'm hopeful that this will start to steer us in the right direction. Not only my state of Iowa, I hope it has some impact across the country, because letting students speak their minds is central to the idea of a liberal arts education. But the default has increasingly become to censor at the drop of a hat, only allowing free speech if administrators find blowback. Just look to a case last month here in Washington, D.C. At George Washington University, a student put up posters criticizing having the Olympics in China given the repressive regime there. And we know about that repressive regime because we talk about it quite often as the Chinese communists deny freedom of religion and other freedoms to the Uyghur minority. These posters at George Washington University were well done and well within the mainstream discussion. They speak to the concerns that I had myself about what goes on in China. But the university immediately responded by tearing them down and saying the posters were racist. They only reversed themselves when it came out that the artist himself, I better say himself or herself, was Chinese, and that the concerns were far from unique. I find it hard to believe the university's namesake would approve of this approach. Examples like this are why we need Iowa's new free speech course, and hopefully that example set in my state by our own state legislators is followed elsewhere. Students and administrators alike have forgotten why the First Amendment matters. I'm glad to see states like Iowa starting to remind everybody. I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of